Good evening. I'm Jack Hemingway. Welcome to Incredible Idaho. Incredible Idaho. Our state really is something pretty special. Very few places in this country enjoy as many beautiful wild lands and wild game as we do. The people of this state made a commitment back in 1938. They passed this initiative to create a Fish and Game Commission for the purpose of protecting, preserving, perpetuating, and managing Idaho's wildlife. Hand in hand with preserving Idaho's wildlife comes the responsibility of preserving the wild places where these animals make their home. It's a big challenge, and Idaho's taken it to heart. Ansel Adams, the famous photographer who captured the magnificence of the nation's wilderness in his stunning photographs, wrote eloquently of preserving America's wild places. He writes, "You must have certain areas of the world left as close to primal condition as possible. You must have quietness and a certain amount of solitude. You must be able to touch the living rock, drink the pure waters, scan the great vistas, sleep under the stars, and awaken to the cool dawn wind. Such experiences are the heritage of all people." Perhaps no one feels that sentiment more strongly than the folks charged with the responsibility to preserve the wild animals and wild places that remain. For conservation officers Lynn Merrill and Joe Curry, that means working the mountains and rivers of Idaho's spectacular backcountry.
Are you ready? Shouldn't take but a few hours to get up in here.
I first started into fish and game work because I thought I would have an opportunity to spend a lot of time with wildlife. Fortunately, that hope has come true for the most part. Throughout the year, I spend time with big game, small game, fish, predators on occasion, and of course, I deal with the people that are also involved with those animals. As a conservation officer, my role is to preserve and protect the wildlife, and I do that by making sure that people treat the wildlife with respect, follow and obey all the rules of the state of Idaho. So I enjoy my job because I have an opportunity to do just what our preamble says, and that is preserve and protect wildlife for the people within the state of Idaho. And that's one of the things that's real important for all of us to remember, is that the wildlife within the state belongs to all of the people for the enjoyment of everyone. Yeah.
Wildlife needs habitat to survive. That means food, water, shelter, and space. Presently in Idaho, we have 3.8 million acres of designated wilderness. That is, land permanently set aside in its natural state by the Federal Wilderness Act of 1964. In addition, our state boasts another 11 million acres of roadless land, all areas that meet the habitat requirements of wildlife. But for the men and women who work to preserve and protect our wildlife, these vast reaches of backcountry can prove quite a challenge.
You know, we had a situation here a couple years ago where a fellow got in some elk over here and shot a few more than he was supposed to, left most of them there to rot. We were able to make contact with the gentleman and take care of that situation. In the summertime, when we spend time in these areas for several reasons, which include monitoring what's happening with the wildlife populations, the movements, what's occurring in the habitat, watching for things that might be destructive in nature or positive in nature. We make contacts with public that are up here utilizing the areas to either help them out or to see that they're obeying the laws and that everything's going according to Hoyle. Looks like got more elk beds all over the ridge here.
This area of eastern Idaho is known as Poker Peak, a lush paradise that begins gently along the shoreline of Palisades Reservoir and stretches to the snowy crown of Caribou Mountain. Summer is in its full glory. The cool green forest glades yield to spectacular mountain meadows blanketed in a profusion of wildflowers. Lavender blue lupine, the daisy-like balsam root, bright red Indian paintbrush, the delicate pale bloom of phlox, snowbrush, serviceberry, chokecherry. Native plants not only pleasing to our senses, but important components of habitat for the many wildlife species that make this area their home.
Oh, you're talking a myriad of animals here. As far as the game species, we're talking deer, elk, moose, bear. There's a variety of non-game species. We have predators, a lot of songbirds. There's just a tremendous amount of diversity up here in wildlife.
Poker Peak, along with neighboring areas Bear Creek, Caribou, and the Palisades, are all candidates for wilderness designation. Places set aside in their natural state for future generations to enjoy. It seems, as daily life becomes more complicated, people have a need to seek out the solitude and peace that wilderness offers.
Oh, I think about everything when I'm up here. I think about my family, the future, the past. I think about the little birds flying around. Basically, I try to mentally relax when I'm up here. I see a real need for this type of a country to exist and to remain. People are clamoring from the cities to have an experience back in country like this all the time. And there's a real demand from the public to simply be back here. They enjoy it. They enjoy the solitude themselves.
In a number of states, such as our neighbors, Oregon and Washington, the demand has become so insistent that access has been limited to wilderness areas. So far in Idaho, aside from requiring permits to float on our wilderness rivers, we've managed to forestall any restrictions. But the real battle remains.
My concern is that if many of the proposed wilderness areas are not kept as the way they are now, man will have a tendency to take the last merchantable timber in the draws and make a road up to the peak to drill an oil well or see what kind of mineral might be in the ground. And obviously there's a time and a place for all the things that man requires. We need to build homes, and we need to have roads. We need to have places to buy our groceries. And that's fine, but those places need not to be here, and they don't need to be everywhere. We can maybe keep a bit of what we like to think America once was and allow an opportunity for our children and our children's children to come and see that very thing, what once was, because we don't have much of it left.
Idaho's largest animal, Shira's moose, is a quiet resident of most of the wilderness areas of our state. But this mysterious animal is so well adapted, it can be found almost anywhere in our state. They appear awkward and ungainly, rolling their shoulders as they slump along in the perfect imitation of a petulant bully. Long-legged and humpbacked, they've developed a reputation as a belligerent, disagreeable creature. Their stare seems ominous, and their aggressive stance threatening. But for the most part, the Shira's moose is a solitary animal, keeping to himself, and the character flaws attributed to bad temper may simply be the result of his inquisitive nature.
Many people do associate moose with being aggressive. A lot of that, what people interpret as being aggressive, is mere curiosity on the moose's part. An adult moose doesn't have a lot of natural enemies out in the wilds. Now, of course, the calves, as they're growing up, do have things that would eat them. But as they grow older and bigger, there's not much in the woods that's going to challenge an adult moose, and they consequently become very curious.
A creature as large and bulky as a moose can't help but evoke a certain amount of mystique. They spend their summer days lazily feeding, often found camped in the middle of a small pond or marsh. Their huge heads plunge beneath the shallow waters, seeking out the tender vegetation below. By early summer, most of the females have given birth, and like most parents, their main concern is the protection of that calf.
As you'll notice, the cow keeps checking to the right in the brush. The probability is that there is a calf over there. This time of year, the calves are relatively small. They're still totally dependent upon their mother for survival. They're nursing. They don't wean these calves until August and September. So she undoubtedly is showing a little bit of concern, being that she keeps checking over into that area.
By midsummer, when a calf is a little older and stronger, it shadows its mother, rarely leaving her side. Except for its color, the calf looks much like a miniature adult with elongated legs and a small hump to its back. As it matures, it will gradually turn from a reddish brown to the darker color of an adult. Their coats are made up of brittle, hollow hairs that provide insulation in the winter. But in the summer, the dense black coat can be a burden.
They need the protection from the bugs and from the heat because they are a big black animal and they do draw a lot of heat in their system. So they like the heavy, thick, boggy bottoms where they can get out of the hot weather and get into some mud to roll in and get rid of some of the mosquitoes.
This is a young male, probably a yearling, growing his very first set of antlers. He has yet to acquire the bulky, muscular frame of a big bull, but he's already developed the intense curiosity of his species. His knobby, immature antlers aren't very impressive now, but he has the potential to someday display a spectacular rack that can weigh up to 40 pounds. Moose shed their antlers in the early winter, only to begin immediately growing another set. By September, the velvet will be completely rubbed off and the massive antlers will emerge hard and polished, ready for the challenge of the breeding season. But during the summer months, when the antlers are still encased in delicate tissue, the big bulls exercise caution.
A moose that would have a severe accident on one of these antlers would stand the possibility of bleeding to death. And so they're very reclusive. They're not aggressive at all, and they tend to stay hidden and do as little as possible. The energy that it takes to grow these antlers is tremendous.
Few can match the majesty of a big bull moose. He's a symbol of nobility and splendor, and somehow his somber dignity defines all that's romantic and magnificent in our wild places. In 1992, 3 runs of Snake River salmon were added to the threatened and endangered species list. They were listed because salmon numbers have plummeted since the construction of the giant hydroelectric dams on the Snake and Columbia rivers. Under current operations, 55 to 77% of the young migrating smolts never make it to the ocean. They become either lost in the reservoirs or destroyed by the dams themselves. Until this problem is addressed, salmon numbers will continue to dwindle. But in the meantime, scientists are experimenting with research methods designed to build a more successful fish. These efforts won't fix the problem, but they may buy some time for our threatened salmon runs.
8-inch brookie wad, 5-inch steely wad, Chinook 01.
In Idaho's Stanley Basin, fish and game biologists are surveying the beautiful, pristine streams where the young salmon offspring spend their first year of life.
Steelhead 5-inch 1, Chinook 01, 4-inch brook trout 1.
Trying to find out what the density and population is. We do probably 130 snorkel sites in the upper Salmon River, and from that we can estimate the population of both Chinook and steelhead juveniles up here.
Some of the juvenile salmon and steelhead are probably the offspring of hatchery-raised fish that were allowed to bypass the hatchery facility on the return from the ocean to spawn naturally in these streams. By counting these small fish, researchers can get an estimate on the survival rate from eggs to tiny fish, like this called par.
We've seen survivals in around 30% up here on average in the past few years. And that's pretty good. That's some good survival. An average female will have a little bit over 5,000 eggs in it. So we're seeing up here 30%, I hope I can do my math right, but probably 1,600 juveniles produced from one female getting up here to successfully spawn.
Researchers are attempting to measure the survival rate through each stage of a salmon's life. Crooked River, near Elk City, is a stream that feeds into the South Fork of the Clearwater River. In the springtime, biologists use this trap to collect juvenile salmon and steelhead for research. These too are what scientists call natural fish, the offspring of hatchery fish that have been allowed to spawn naturally in Idaho's rivers.
These are pretty good looking fish here. They're about the right size for what we see for really good populations of natural fish. They got good coloration to them, good amount of scales on them, no real damages to them. Look pretty healthy fish. They should have a good chance.
Their chances for survival will be measured and recorded by an elaborate computer system. The young fish are marked with a tiny computer chip called a pit tag, or passive integrated transponder. As the chip is inserted, the scientists key in the fish's species, condition, location, and size. If this little salmon manages to make it through the reservoir, it stands a good chance of bypassing the turbines of Lower Granite Dam. Then, as it passes through a series of flumes and hoppers that shunt the young salmon around the big barrier, its personal pit tag number will be recorded. In this manner, biologists can discover how many salmon smolts have survived this first leg of their trip to the sea and measure their migration time from Crooked River. If our little fish weathers the rest of the journey to the ocean and then survives to return 2 or 3 years from now as a big adult, once again, the pit tag will tell scientists when it passes Lower Granite Dam. It will then be one of the few salmon to come full circle, struggling upstream to spawn back at its original birthplace in Crooked River. Other studies are being conducted to increase the chance of survival for hatchery fish. Research biologist Dave Canamella is redecorating, trying to make hatcheries feel a bit more like home for the young salmon.
We're trying to integrate some natural features into the hatchery, improve the fish health, quality of the fish, the Chinook that we're raising. So we've got two groups. We've got a control group that's reared in the traditional fashion, no cover, no baffles. And then we've got the treatment groups, 3 of each, that have shading and baffles.
Traditionally, the fish are raised in gray, sterile raceways that look like this. But the modified raceways have shading to imitate the overhanging branches along a stream. In the wild, small fish learn to seek out shaded areas of a river to avoid excessive sunlight and escape predators. The baffles were added to create a current so the fish can get an idea of what it's like to swim in a river.
And we've camouflaged, as you can see on the bottom, and that is basically to give the fish a little more natural, what they would be seeing in a natural environment. Fish have the ability to change color, and they will match their color to the background.
Some raceways, such as these at Clearwater Hatchery, have been completely painted in camouflage colors. Fish from both the control group and fish raised in the modified raceways have been marked with pit tags. The question is, which group will survive in greater numbers to Lower Granite Dam? And then, which group will have a better return back to the hatcheries as adults? It will be several years before scientists have enough information to measure the results of these efforts.
So we think by doing these things in the hatchery, we give these fish kind of an advantage. They're not going out there cold turkey where they got to learn everything. And we think maybe that'll help.
Another effort to boost salmon numbers is going on near the headwaters of the Locksaw River. Quality salmon habitat in the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness area has been virtually depleted of the fish since hydroelectric dams blocked their route to and from the sea. The original wild fish are gone, but scientists are hoping to restore a run of salmon, again with help from the hatcheries.
What we're doing is helicopter outplanting about 120,000 juvenile Chinook from here up to the upper part of White Sands Creek and Big Flat Creek. They'll stay up there probably for the duration of the summer, and then when the first cold front comes through, end of the summer, late August, early September, they'll start moving out and leave the headwaters where we planted them and head towards the ocean in the fall.
The hope is that in 2 or 3 years, a few survivors will swim back to the headwaters as adults to spawn in the wilderness streams that for so long have been bereft of their native salmon. But all these efforts will not save our salmon runs.
And if we gain some percentage points here, I think that's great. We got to do everything we can, whether it's in habitats or hatchery or anywhere else. But our biggest battle and where we're going to win or lose salmon and steelhead will be downriver at the hydro system. If we can break through that, then we'll be on our way to recovery.
It's been said that Idaho is what America once was. As we close our show tonight, we leave you with images of Idaho, a place where one can still find the quiet and peace of untouched country, beautiful, remarkable, and remote.